So, welcome to ELT in Chile podcast about teaching English in Chile. In this space, Kevin and I talk to teachers, teacher trainers, and academics who would like to share their experiences and expertise in various aspects of English language teaching in Chile and globally. In this video episode, we will be talking to Rodrigo Arellano, who will be talking about teaching English and his experience as a teacher and researcher. So, Kevin.
Okay, super. Well, welcome, Rodrigo. Your bio says, Dr. Rodrigo Arellano is a teacher, educator, and lecturer at La Frontera University in Temuco in Chile. He studied his PhD in applied linguistics at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, where he taught discourse analysis, multilingualism, research methods, and academic writing courses at the master's program in applied linguistics and TESOL. He has taught a variety of courses in theoretical and applied linguistics during his career in Chile as well, including second language acquisition, semantics and pragmatics and assessment, amongst others. His research areas are teacher training, pedagogical discourse, linguistic landscapes, and corpus linguistics. Currently, he is working on projects about IELTS training, an area he taught widely in Australia, and he is also working on a project about the teaching of linguistics and gamification. He has also worked as a teacher of Spanish as a foreign language and holds an MA in Educational Studies and a Bachelor of Education. Well, Rodrigo, welcome to this podcast. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And if you don't mind, we just start right with the first question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me, and let's start.
Okay, super. Thanks. Let's start with something very basic. What do you think are the challenges, linguistically speaking, that we face as teacher educators more globally these days?
So if we're talking about global terms, I would say migration processes are a big challenge. And I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as an opportunity. Mm-hmm. So if you are not forced to migrate and you are migrating because you want to have a better life, because you want to experience a new language, because you want to travel, that's kind of an eye-opener for you. Mm-hmm. And first you are learning English, you are testing, you are checking if your English first works. But also we experience all these bilingual and multilingual realities, which open our eyes to see how the world really is. I would say that maybe in Chile we have kind of a monolingual mindset in that sense, and we believe that everything must happen in Spanish. But the reality of the world is that it's very multilingual, right? Think about global Englishes even, or Spanish as a foreign language, or other languages that are emerging, let's say, and also others which are disappearing. So multilingualism is a big topic if we are talking about global elements.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I think we all had the opportunity from both, or the experience from both perspectives, right? I mean, we've all lived, studied, worked abroad.
Yeah.
So from the, shall we say, student's perspective, Rodrigo, you talk about opportunities and about exchange and multilingualism. From a student's perspective, how did you experience all of this?
Well, it was a bit shocking at first because I've traveled to Australia in multiple occasions. First, I did it as an exchange student when I was 21.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to cook to start with. But then you realize that what you are taught at school or university is not always the reality. So I was taught British English at uni. I was taught American English at school, and then I ended up in Australia. So the first shocking thing about the accent maybe is the most noticeable element. But then you realize that it's just a variety and that's all. Also, other challenges I would say are related to the differences in the educational systems. That was a kind of shocking experience. I remember that I had the time slot sometimes of 1 hour in a course, and from my Chilean perspective, I said to myself, in 1 hour we are doing nothing. Right? But the class started on time, It finished on time. Everything was prepared. All students were there sitting, waiting for the class. So that cultural change is really an eye-opener. And it's a wonderful experience. I mean, if anyone could go abroad to study or to work or to travel, please do it.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And maybe this may bring us relatively smoothly to the next question. You've done quite a lot of work in discourse analysis linked to teacher education. You also talk about how, you learn different varieties or exposed to different varieties in your English formation, shall we say. I would be interested in what you see as the role of discourse analysis in teacher education and how discourse analysis can be used to train future teachers. What are the benefits? What are maybe some problems that we're encountering?
Sure. Well, I believe that discourse analysis is essential in the training of English teachers and even beyond, because when you develop analytical skills, you focus on detail first.
Yeah.
And not only in teacher education, but in all areas that's important. And when you also become analytical, you also become critical, right? And here we know that critical doesn't mean that you are finding flaws not everywhere you look at, but you are evaluating phenomena. And in this case, you are evaluating texts. You are not believing everything you are told. And you try to identify patterns and tendencies and ideologies and beliefs. So a good discourse analysis course is teaching you how to read between lines and how to unmask those evident elements that are not that evident in the first place. And just with some training, you look at texts with different eyes.
This is super interesting what you just said. Critical thinking or critical analysis, as in questioning things rather than saying, oh, this is bad and we don't want it. No, it's the idea of being able to recognize patterns, to question things and not take everything at face value. How is this related to the Chilean reality when we talk about discourse analysis, critical discourse analysis in the Chilean context?
Well, first I would say that you should start not only in Chile, but with your own discourse as a teacher. And first I try to teach my students how to control their discourses, how to, for example, select the right input for their students, how to think about the language they are using in the materials they are writing, the use of repetition, the use of pet words, many things that are related to a kind of meta-linguistic awareness component. So you are thinking about the way you are speaking. But also we are living in a society, including here in the Chilean context, of misinformation, right? Different sectors of the society are trying to mislead the general population, and then reading critically and employing some strategies from discourse analysis can help us unmask those realities, which look logical, maybe, but they are not that true.
Well, that's a really interesting point that you're making there, and I think I remember doing a bit of work on this myself a couple of years ago, and it's quite interesting without analyzing critically how the public perception around a concept is shaped by what they read and what they're exposed. And I think, just maybe to digress a little bit, social media these days is a well, shall we say, of misinformation. Because like our students, they use a lot of social media. They use, like, now we're in the age of ChatGPT, which also generative AI in general, which also comes, with quite a huge criticism of being biased, of regurgitating almost quite discriminative language. How do we help our students to become critical in this sense, in the use of the media that they consume and the tools that they use to produce class output, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I could maybe kind of divide it between, let's say, the general population and then English teachers.
Yeah.
So if we are talking about the general population, it's always good to compare sources. So people tend to believe everything they read, or let's start with the first thing they read or the first thing they're exposed to. So they just see something on Twitter or Facebook, and they tend to believe it. But then if you are going more into the detail about how language works, I am telling my students, hey, let's bring everything you know from your grammar courses here to the discourse analysis class, and let's see the tenses. Are they using present simple? So are they expressing these are facts? Are they using modality? And that's speculation, possibility. So students are happy to see those connections, that the courses are not isolated.
Yeah.
But we can use what we know from one course, and we can bring that knowledge to the discourse analysis class. And in that sense, we are kind of focusing on a more systematic analysis. I actually teach my students a lot about different strategies to improve the objectivity of discourse analysis, which is in many cases a big issue. And I tell them, for example, let's quantify, let's count how many tenses or how many tokens, right? We have of these tenses, and now we have statistics. So it's not just your opinion; we have evidence, and that's a better argument.
Yeah,
that is a really good approach to this, actually, Rodrigo. Well, thank you for that. You also are an IELTS teacher trainer, or you're interested in IELTS teacher training and IELTS preparation. If I may move this conversation towards this area for a bit, what do you think are the main issues in preparing language teachers to become IELTS instructors?
Oh, that's a big question.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So problems. I would say that in general, not just about IELTS, but in terms of international exams, there is a lack of preparation or training for the instructor. Right? So the IELTS teacher or the CAE teacher or the FCE teacher learned by doing, learned by making mistakes. I was looking at some statistics some time ago of in relation to IELTS instructors, and almost 60% of IELTS instructors, most of them native speakers, never took the test.
That's a very important fact.
It is a detail.
Yes.
It's a big thing, right? So lack of training is one thing, but for example, at least in the case of IELTS, IDP and British Council are both quite aware of this lack of training, and they are offering some training opportunities, most of them free. For example, IDP has this free course to understand speaking and writing criteria that you can access if you just Google it. You will find it easily. Or they are always running workshops that you can attend, even if you are in South America, I believe, because they are for the Pacific area. And they kind of teach you how to approach the different skills, how to get into the mind of the examiner, in a sense. And in that, I think the strategies that you can learn as a discourse analyst are quite helpful.
I think there's one area, Rodrigo, that, for example, it's part of the writing rule, for example, like the idea of cohesive devices or transitional phrases, which is a very important part that you can actually include in your teaching, that you have to include. For example, in that case, if you want to have a successful writing task, for example, and then in that case, discourse analysis really helps. And Kevin, I don't know if you would like to move on to maybe the next section or maybe the next questions.
Yes, no, that was actually a very smooth transition. Thanks, Jose. So picking up on what Jose just said, where discourse analysis is to some extent relevant for IELTS training.
Yeah.
Rodrigo, how do you think that this actually can be combined? And also, this is again a double-barreled question, sorry for that. What hindrances do you identify in using discourse analysis in IELTS training?
Well, again, that's also a big question. Yeah, so I would say maybe we are not teaching discourse analysis formally to students who are IELTS candidates, but we can use certain strategies using certain methods, right? For example, genre analysis from discourse analysis, I think, offers valuable insights, understanding that in different sections of the text, you are more likely to find certain answers because you know how the text works. And also understanding that in different sections of these texts, we're going to use a specific vocabulary and some specific grammar. Right? I always give my students the example of recipes. Because recipes have two very clear moments, let's say, when you are writing one or when you are reading one. So in the first stage, you have the list of ingredients, and that is going to be full with nouns or noun phrases, quantifiers, prepositions, and you are not going to add anything else. It's that, right? And then in the second part, you're going to have verbs, normally using imperative forms, and you know what to expect. So then if you are teaching your students what to expect in a biography, in reading about history, in a report, you increase their chances to use the language the examiner wants to hear, or also to find the answers quickly, because you have a limited time, so you need to do it fast as possible. So I normally tell my students, joking, knowing the enemy is always a good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. On this, your recent paper with Gisem Sain presents 3 tasks to help IELTS test takers to prepare better for the test and to develop some sort of strategies to understand the tasks. What do you think a successful IELTS candidate needs to do, and how can we as teachers help them to achieve this goal?
Yeah, this was a set of papers I wrote with a Turkish teacher, a very good friend of mine. And we basically designed 12 fast teaching activities that teachers can implement in different skills. And it was published in a mini special from International House. But if I could summarize all those activities into one concept, I would say they are all somehow related to test wiseness, to become familiar with the test. So in the same way, you need to know about the stages in a text or the lexicogrammatical features that texts need. You need to know about the specific questions you are going to have in tests and how to approach those questions. And you know that you are going to have a specific number of question types, not more than that. And then you have to develop a certain kind of expertise to answer those questions quickly and efficiently.
I'm almost tempted to ask quite a provocative question, if you allow me to. Would you say that international exams prepare the student to become better in English, or are we preparing the students to pass the test?
Yeah, I see the issue there.
I know. Talking about washback and all of that.
That's what we call a washback effect, right? So just teaching for the test or teaching for something beyond the test. Well, if they hire you to train candidates, you need to do your best to help them pass the test. But of course, I would say you have to design activities where you could kill two birds with one stone. So you are preparing them for the test, but you are also teaching them language which is natural, authentic. That is one of the problems I commonly see when I teach new students. They come with the belief that, for example, for the speaking and the writing components, they have to use these fancy words, C1, C2 words only. And I tell them, look, the speaking test is a conversation.
Yes.
And you need to sound authentic, and you need to sound natural, right? So we need to find ways to prepare them for the test, but also teaching them something they could use once they go abroad or once they interact with others. It's always a tricky issue, but imagine if you are just focusing on the test and they are writing every day and they are reading every day.
Every day.
That's also quite boring even for the teacher. But if you make it more communicative, and IELTS is actually a communicative test. We have no grammar component like explicitly stated, and grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation are included in the skills, right? Which is the tendency of international tests these days. This is the big trend. So yeah, we need to do a little both, but you need to help them. Not they will fire you.
On that note, well, you talk about that it's not in international tests. We're not explicitly looking for grammar. There's no descriptor for grammar, a standalone descriptor of grammar. Grammar may be embedded in the descriptors for oral production. But at the end of the day, we still need to teach grammar. We still need to teach the traditional 4 skills. How can we as teachers make sure that we successfully train those skills whilst also preparing our students for real-life communication? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. Well, we have to do it from the practice of understanding the test if our time is limited.
Yeah.
For example, in the case of the reading and the listening tests, most of the answers are nouns. We know that. And actually, in some analysis I have done, I have discovered that on average, 35 questions out of 40 are nouns, right? And then they add some distractors. Now, sometimes one answer is an adverb or a verb, but the focus is on nouns, right? So then, understanding how the context works, now the words before and the words after, helping them to predict the possible answers based on how the sentence is written. All that is grammar in context. And they see that they are learning authentic grammar that they could use beyond the test. But also they're preparing specific strategies to pass, to get the score they need.
This is super
we do it
interesting.
kind of in context.
Yeah, absolutely. Rodrigo, you made you're making some really, really good points. I also work with students who would like to prepare the IELTS, and sometimes it's like, like you said, they also have the ideas that they need to use like these really fancy words, but that's not enough, especially in writing, because in our Chilean context, for example, people don't write so much. I mean, they are maybe more prepared for the speaking part, but for writing, I think that's where I see a lot of difficulties.
Yeah, well, and actually, if you look at the statistics in writing, now we have this option in IELTS called retake.
Yeah.
Tremendously successful. I don't know if we have it in Chile now. It started in the UK and in Australia, and because of their success, they've been implementing it in different places. But if I remember the statistics correctly, last year, 53% of candidates retook writing.
Yes.
Right? So more than half of candidates. So also by doing our research, by focusing on statistics and the tendencies and what is happening with candidates, we can approach the task in a better way. and not teaching much through, let's say, intuition. I believe this could be happening, or I like this topic, so I'm going to focus on that.
Focus on that, yeah.
But yeah, writing it's a big headache for IELTS candidates.
Absolutely, yes. And well, Rodrigo, if we move on to like our next section, how has your research in teacher training evolved since your PhD? What gaps do you still see in our field?
Right. Well, just to put a little bit of context, briefly, my thesis was about the identification of ideologies in the training of linguists, right? And what I did was I used CDA and corpus linguistics combined to explore ideologies in policy documents, interviews, teaching materials. But because of the nature of those two methods that I used, I would say that the analysis, and I want it that way, was quite textual, right? The focus was on texts, on the traditional notion of text. And although that was fine, when I was analyzing teaching material, I said to myself, hey, a nice follow-up project must be adding the layer of multimodality. Because now everything is visual, we have sounds, we have colors, everything that communicates as a semiotic instrument can be a multimodal component. And also when I was finishing my PhD program, I started reading quite a lot about linguistic landscapes, which is an area I found fascinating. And I ended up actually, in my free time, or when I was, walking around or hanging out with some friends, I was taking pictures of multilingual elements I saw in the city. And with a colleague of mine from Peru, we actually published 2 papers in that field about those pictures. And at one point, we made it more systematic, and we took pictures in the 2 universities we were in, because basically universities, at least in Australia, they promote themselves as multicultural places. But then when you see the reality of the campus, everything is monolingual. And of course, you listen to the conversations and people talking, but the policy in practice of the university is a monolingual one. So there's a contradiction between the discourse they use to promote the university and what you see in campus. So I would say that the evolution of the topics I'm researching comes to that direction. Multimodality is a big area for me now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a very good example of, like, stating that institutions sometimes they promote multilingualism, but again, for example, if we think of the case of Chile, where we are a monolingual country, a Spanish-speaking country, trying to foster multilingualism. Again, most things are in, or maybe everything is in Spanish, instead of trying to promote maybe other languages, not only Spanish, but for example English, or Mabulungun, for example, in Temuco, or different languages. And also, Rodrigo, like, you gave the example of a very important one, which I think is like the duration of a class, which was, let's say, 1 hour. I think in my experience in Chile, they are also becoming a little shorter. We went from like maybe an hour and a half. Now we're going to 70 minutes. Is that was one of the main differences? What other differences, because you studied and taught in Australia, what other differences have you observed between teacher education in Australia and Chile, maybe in more broad terms?
Well, one of the most remarkable things I could say as an educator is having students from all over the world.
Okay.
So I remember that, for instance, my first TESOL class for teacher training purposes in Australia was full with Japanese students.
Yeah.
And I love Japan. I love it. And I actually remember that, as a teacher, you normally go to the classroom a couple of minutes earlier just to check that the computer is okay. And I was just looking at the classroom because I was just in front of it in my office, and they were entering, let's say, 40 minutes before, 30 minutes before, and I didn't know who they were, just students walking. And then when I got into the classroom, everything was ready. They had their textbooks open. The projector was ready for me, and they had snacks for the teacher.
That's great. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying every student should do that, but that's an example of the cultural experiences and expectations, and the role that the teacher plays in those cultures. So having many international students was one thing. Many students from Asia, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, Indian. Not too many from Europe. We did have some, but a big audience for us was Asia, and of course Australian students. That was one big difference. Another big difference I could remember is the focus on testing, actually. So I studied in Australia for, so I did an exchange program, 2 masters and my PhD, so maybe 6 years, and I only had 2 tests in 6 years. And most of the assessments are based on reflective essays, case studies, presentations, discussions, data analysis to write reports. So first, there's a lot of writing, and we don't have that focus here in Chile. And also, in my view, we test too often here. And that is not helping them develop other skills, such as the one you develop when you're writing. Arguing, focusing on organizing your arguments, many things.
Right, very good. And so also, thank you, Rodrigo. And also something that you mentioned, maybe that was a question that Kevin asked at the beginning. For example, I think the 3 of us have had the experience, fortunately, of maybe living abroad, maybe studying abroad. Now, Kevin is working abroad. Do you think we, as maybe, linguists or maybe language teachers, do you think, what's the value of international experience, let's say, for you? How has this influenced the way you see teaching and also language teaching and learning, of course?
Yeah, well, first, as I was saying, it's kind of an eye-opener because you see how the real world is. You are checking that your English is okay, that you can survive.
Sure.
But even beyond the teaching life, it helps you as an individual. You become independent. You have to do everything by yourself. So that creates a new sensation of freedom, even.
Sure. And responsibility, probably.
Absolutely.
You have to control your budget, which is normally limited when you just arrive. And then ideally things improve. It's a wonderful experience. It's a wonderful experience. I can't recommend it enough. I lived in Australia for 10 years. And I would say they were the best years of my life. I mean, I love Australia, but I've also had the tremendous opportunity of visiting many different countries. I can't recommend it enough. Go abroad. And if you have the language.
Yes, absolutely.
What is stopping you?
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's like it's like a test for us, when we're like you said, like maybe testing your language skills, also it develops other responsibilities, also like skills. Also, for example, for Kevin, who's now working in Chile, probably he has been developing new skills every day.
Every day.
Learning our Chilean slang.
Yes.
That's one of the challenges. Opportunities, I should say.
We also speak quite fast here in Chile, so that's also a challenge.
Yes.
Yes.
People normally say, because I was teaching Spanish for quite a while,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and I actually had a couple of students that said to me, I wanted to be in your class because if I understand your Spanish, I can understand everybody. And I said, okay, I will take it as a compliment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Rodrigo, where do you see like the research that we do, maybe applied linguistics? Where do you think that this is going? What direction is this taking? Maybe in the next decade, especially with the inclusion or maybe with the advances in AI or maybe in
Right.
other technologies.
Right. If we're talking about technologies, I'm very excited about biolinguistics.
Yeah.
Now, how we can research for example, the responses of the body
Yeah.
when we are using language.
Mhm.
I'm quite excited about eye tracking, for instance, and I
Mhm.
would love to carry out some research in that area here in my university here in Chile. But also, when I've actually had this conversation with my own students,
Yeah.
it seems that, in a sense, some Chomskyan principles are coming back, because he talked about biolinguistics decades ago,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and we went through all the social elements that language includes, which are also relevant. But now we are coming back, so it's like a pendulum, maybe,
Yeah.
in a sense. And if I
Mhm.
try to link that with the area of assessment, something I would really like to do is to have, for example, students in front of the computer answering the test
Yeah.
while I
Mhm.
am measuring some physiological responses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only the eye movements, also the heart rate,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
sweating, right? Or as I joke saying this to my colleagues, I want to measure the pain. In a sense, but in a good sense, in a good sense.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
Because we also know that when we are talking about testing
yeah,
and assessment and facing international tests, there is anxiety,
sure.
Mhm.
stress. I mean, candidates have so many things in their minds.
Yeah,
If I fail, I don't get the visa.
sure.
If I fail, I don't
Scholarship.
get the scholarship.
Mhm.
So many things going through their minds. And it would be good to know how we can improve the experience, how to make it user friendly. So it doesn't have to always be painful. It is painful in the sense that we have to study and we have to
Sure.
practice. But I actually remember once I watched a YouTube video in an IELTS channel. I can't
Mhm.
remember the name. I think it's Keith Speaking or something like
Mhm.
that. And this is a very nice fellow, and he said once, "Go and face this day with a smile."
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
remember I had to stop the video and say, "But why is he telling me that I have to smile when I'm going to be seated for 4 hours facing a very difficult test?"
Mm.
And then he started explaining this idea that if you go there with a positive attitude, if you face the speaking test as a conversation,
Mm.
and you
Mhm.
can make the examiner laugh, and he forgets that he's testing you or she's testing you, you maximize your chances, right? And I found it an excellent tip.
Yeah.
An
Mhm.
excellent tip. So yeah, I see the research going into some more biological
Hmm.
aspects.
It's a very interesting
And
point.
we're talking about technology. Well, AI and corpus linguistics have a lot to say,
Yeah.
right? There are also some misconceptions about the way people can use them together, but
Mhm.
they they all come to the idea of identifying and understanding tendencies and patterns and authentic ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, for example, I've been experimenting with AI trying to evaluate students' writings.
Hmm.
And it seems to me, I would have to make it more systematically, but it
Yeah.
seems to me that the vocabulary and the grammar is evaluated fairly, let's say, But the organization element, cohesion, coherence, or a task fulfillment, following the instructions, I would say that AI is still quite weak in those criteria.
Yeah.
But of course, even with a Word document, you can identify a typo,
Sure.
or a grammar problem, right?
Yeah.
But that understanding of the global message and how we construct it, I think that is something we should focus on in the future, to continue improving AI, and we will be together for a long time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what it seems. Thank you very much for this interesting synopsis of what may happen or what is happening
Yes.
in the field. And now, maybe if I can summarize, or if we can bring this conversation slowly to a closure, there's one last big question. I think that's transpired in today's interview, that I asked the big questions. What advice, Rodrigo, what advice would you give to young researchers who are entering the field of applied linguistics and TESOL today?
Well, we are young as well, so it could be advice for us.
That's true. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say not being afraid of trying new methods or new methodologies. Sometimes because you receive training in one area, you believe you should always continue in that area.
Yeah.
As I was telling you earlier, I just discovered linguistic landscapes research recently, and I'm already working in that area, and I found it fascinating. I actually remember the first class I had a corpus linguistics lesson,
Yeah.
and it was like, I couldn't sleep. This is great. This is great. So not being afraid of trying new things, not feeling that you must be 100% ready to conduct research.
Yeah.
We are never 100% ready.
Yeah.
And you learn by doing. You can, help others. You can be part of a team. You can write with someone who has more experience.
Yeah.
And you are going to save yourself years of pain, if we could continue talking about pain, right? Because you are going to learn from a mentor. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Go to conferences, read widely, talk to people in conferences.
Yeah.
I am kind of a shy person. I consider myself a shy person, and I love going to conferences and just listening. But my wife said to me once, you have to talk to people. You have to go and say, I love your research, and maybe we can do something together. And actually, the two papers I wrote in the area of linguistic landscapes, I wrote it with a guy I met in a conference and said, hi, I love your research. So interact with others, and you are going to see the big tendencies and the big discussions that people are having.
I think it's also quite an opportunity to learn from others beyond the words of your supervisor or your immediate colleagues that you see every day.
And not only linguists. I mean, it would be good to interact with people from other areas.
Yeah.
And also people who are maybe interested in linguistics, but who come from other areas. Yeah. For example, I have two former students, and we are now working together. One of them is a psychologist interested in language, and another one is a criminologist.
Oh, interesting.
And also interested in language. So we can find some common interests, and very nice conversations will emerge from there.
Yeah. But I think I would like to, if I see a paper called Measuring the Pain, I would definitely read it. So I think you have to keep that name.
I have one reader. That's a good name, huh?
You've got a second one, yeah.
Absolutely. It's
we
like
have the name.
test taking,
We have the name.
Yeah, measuring the pain, measuring students' pain. I think it would be a great name. So, Rodrigo, thank you very much for this lovely interview. I don't know, Kevin, if you have any questions or any comments from Rodrigo.
Plenty off, but I think we take this off this recording.
Yes, thank you very much, Rodrigo. Thank you for your time and also for accepting our invitation. It was a lovely conversation, and maybe we can talk again in the future because the field is evolving really quickly. So I think we
Yeah,
will need to see.
thanks to you for inviting me, and it's always nice to hear this podcast.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Yeah, so now with this, we conclude our episode with Rodrigo Arellano. So if you have any questions or comments, you can reach us at podcast@eltinchile.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can visit our website, www.eltinchile.com. So Rodrigo and Kevin, thank you very much, and we'll be in touch.